Hello there. It's been a little while, but the Fourmation Podcast is back here for you. We have to apologise, first of all. We're back with episode number 31, but we have to start, before we get into anything this week's show, we have to start with an apology. I think it's been about 6 weeks off that we've done. And the reason for that, quite simply, is university just got in the way. I think the first week that we had off, we just finished one deadline and we put something out on Twitter saying that we were all going out to the pub because they were open for the first time. That, in reality, wasn't a very good idea for the podcast because we had 1 week off and then we got back the week after and we had a load of other deadlines to do and it was fairly manic. There was a big panic in our uni house as the deadlines were approaching. But forget that now. I've spoken enough about that. They're done. We're done for the uni year. We've decided we're back this week. We're finally back and we're hopefully back for the summer, for the rest of the summer to come, if you'll stick with us. But yeah, we are back and we're ready to produce these regularly again. As you can see, we're all still here. We're all still ready to go. Sam, are you looking forward to kind of getting these back on track again?
Yeah, like you say, it's nice to have that weight lifted off our shoulders now of not having uni work to do for the foreseeable future. But yeah, it's good to be back talking about, obviously got a big summer of football with the Euros coming up, which we'll be talking about today. So it is good to be back talking football with you guys.
Yeah, I have to agree. Devon as well. It was a little bit of a stressful few weeks, wasn't it? We maybe could have fitted it in somewhere, but it was just something that we didn't feel was that necessary, maybe wrongly. What do you think?
It was one of them where we were just, it'll get done. And then that final 14 days, we had about 6 deadlines. It wasn't pretty at all, but thankfully we got through it now, and obviously next week might be a little bit sad when we get his grades back, but we're through it now and the Euros are in sight.
Yeah, and Harry as well, I think you've been to some live football, haven't you, ever since we last recorded? You went to see your team. What was that like for anyone watching you? We'll be thinking the same. We hope next year we'll be back, but you got a behind closed doors experience. What was it like?
I mean, at that point, it wasn't technically behind closed doors. There were 8,000 spectators there, but it was wet. I mean, we were in a queue for about 25 to 30 minutes in a rainy Southampton, something that I'm not used to in May, which wasn't the most pleasant. As soon as we get in, obviously the rain stops. But it was just good to be back. The atmosphere was great because as there was no away supporters, the whole ground was sort of full of the home support, even the away section. So it was really good to be back. And even though I think Southampton were one of 2 teams not to score at home on their singular home fixture, which was relatively disappointing because I was looking forward to being able to cheer a goal at St Mary's again. Like I said, it's just good to see live football once again. And yeah, it's back. It's officially back.
Yeah, hopefully we have all watched our last behind closed doors game on television. But as Sam hinted at there, and as you would have seen from the title of the episode, this is all about England and it's all about the Euros coming up. I have to say, personally, I cannot wait for the summer. I think major tournaments are just what makes that summer go so much quickly and make the next season come along so quickly. But the 33-man squad for England has now been released. It's been released on the day that we are recording this. That's May the 25th. Many expected the final 26-man squad for the tournament to be announced today, but late last night, Gareth Southgate, well, we're guessing it was his decision, decided to delay the final squad until June the 1st, which is the last date that it can be. Southgate said after announcing the squad that this is mainly due to the fact that the Europa League and Champions League finals are still to come this week. 12 players are to be involved in that. So I guess they're just taking a precaution on that. So we've got a squad, but it's going to be cut down. So that's kind of what we're going to aim to do today, is talk through the initial squad that we've been given, the 33 names, who's made it for the first time, who has maybe missed out, maybe been unlucky to miss out. And we also want to try and predict who we think will miss out on that final cut. So there are lots of players, lots of different debates to be had as well. I think Twitter has kind of exploded today because as we've kind of mentioned before with previous England videos, everyone has an opinion. So we're going to get some of our own opinions. We'll get straight on with it with the 4 goalkeepers that are in the squad. They are Jordan Pickford, Dean Henderson, Sam Johnston, and a first senior call-up for Aaron Ramsdale. One name that's missing there is Nick Pope, who has had to have knee surgery after picking up an injury with Burnley. That rules him out. And I think Southgate expressed his disappointment for Pope in his presser today. But Sam, as a result of that Pope injury, there's no real surprises with these 4 selections.
No, this is the 3 goalkeepers that were going to take probably pick themselves now, with Pope obviously going out, which is disappointing, because we obviously, when we picked our starting 11 those months back, we obviously had him in that team, and I think he would have deserved to have started for us in that first game against Croatia. But like you say, I think this is obviously the easiest part. Obviously, happy for Ramsdale to get this call up, but he's not quite there yet, and although he's been in a struggling Sheffield United side, he has had a lot of moments this season where you'd think, he's not a starting goalkeeper for England. So it's going to be Henderson, Johnson and Pickford.
Yeah, you rightly point out there, Sam, that team that we did predict all those months ago, and it means we can already strike one name off. So that's already one that we got wrong. I suppose we did say at the time it's injuries dependent, but there we go. Devon, would there have been anyone else who you would have made a case for in this position? And I can see you're smiling there, because we've had our own discussions kind of in the house. It's talked about a lot, and I know there's one keeper that stands out to you in particular who you would have liked to have seen given a chance.
Well, I said to Sam that this would have been one of my 3rd choice goalkeepers anyway, because how rarely do you use all 3 goalkeepers in a tournament? I'd have taken one of the under-21 goalkeepers, and I'd have taken specifically Freddie Woodman. I think he's been fantastic in the Championship this year, and he's kind of one of them that'll get the experience in without having any involvement in the actual team. And even if he was called upon, I think he's good enough. But I think they're probably right in calling Aaron Ramsdale up, as you said, just for this kind of, it's just a bit of a taster, isn't it? It's like a camp where he'll get to train for a little bit longer and then go back to Sheffield United unless any suitors come for him in the summer. But I think Henderson and Pickford will probably be the 2 in mind fighting for that number 1 spot. I can't see Johnson really getting a look in, so to speak. This is why I think bringing someone like Woodman in there would have actually been looking towards the future. I know, like a bit like when Walcott was called up, but this is like long term, looking beyond them 2. But yeah, other than that, I think goalkeeper is going to probably be the easiest decision to pick from now.
Harry, Sam Johnston has arguably been West Brom's best player this season, so surely that's why Southgate has opted for him. Like, as we kind of touched on, it's no surprise, is it?
Oh no, especially because of the Nick Pope injury. If Nick Pope was fully fit, he would be the 4th goalkeeper, and I imagine Ramsdale would be. I'm not sure if he's still part of the under-21. I know he's 23, but you can have like a certain amount over that age category. But yeah, he's been the best, but also he's been the most consistent. He's saved them in a lot of games this season, especially the Man City game, the Liverpool game where they got points, the Sheffield United one when they won earlier in the season as well. So they're definitely, although he wasn't able to save them, I think he was able to get them more points than what they probably were expecting to. But yeah, with the 4 goalkeepers, I know what Devon's saying about the players being young, but because Dean Henderson is only 24, Ramsdale is only 23, it's going to be very difficult for a player like Woodman to get through the ranks. And I think looking forward, I think Henderson is that quote-unquote younger goalkeeper. Even though he is 24, I think he's the next person that will be really up and coming for the England side.
I'd actually probably have Johnson above Henderson at the moment, because he's played a lot more games this season. Obviously, Henderson's coming to the Man United side a lot more towards the second half of the season, but only 17 appearances for United this season, I think. Johnson, like you say, Johnson's been West Brom's best player by far, and he saved them in a lot of games. So I'd actually probably, not that it really matters, because I think Southgate obviously likes Pickford for his performances in the World Cup, and he's obviously been a regular again for Everton this season. So I'd probably have Johnson as the second pick of the three.
Do you think his Manchester United prestige will make him second place, though? Because he has played consistently in the second half anyway, no matter his level of performance. I think he's been okay, but I agree with you. I think Johnson's been better. Do you think because he's the Manchester United number one, that automatically puts him second place at the minimum?
Yeah, you'd like to think not, but probably in this instance, yeah.
You'd probably say the disappointing thing is that theoretically 2 of the 4 goalkeepers have been involved in relegation. Well, they've been relegated. Pope was, and then we're talking about Pope being the first choice in between that when he was originally there. Burnley finished 17th, so it's the standard of goalkeeping in terms of club is not the best, but in terms of individual quality, we've said that Pope obviously faces a lot of shots. England might face a lot of shots, and he comes out on top in 60% of them. But looking at there, I feel like Pickford's probably going to get the go-ahead due to his heroics in 2018.
Just before we move on, Harry, I saw one suggestion on the BBC website. Well, they had their squad selector, and in their goalkeepers list, they had Alex McCarthy. And I know Saints' keeper situation this year has been a bit bumpy. It's gone from McCarthy to Forster. Presumably, McCarthy wouldn't have been in your thoughts. I know you're probably more of a Forster fan.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. I know Southampton finished above the teams like Burnley and like the 2 that got relegated. But for Nick Pope, for Ramsdale and for Johnson, despite the results going against them more often than not, they were still consistent in their specific position. I still think Ramsdale, although he struggled at times, had an okay season, especially on the back of a Bournemouth season where, he's been behind 2 struggling defences, especially after the Sheffield United defence the season prior was so good. And Johnson saving a lot of games for West Brom. I just don't think McCarthy or Forster have been at that level. And for a team that finished above both of those, that's quite a damning indictment on them, really, and something they definitely need to look to improve upon, because both of them have England caps. They've both been at the level at some point, and it's going to take a lot of work to get back to that.
Yeah, that's it. Then on the goalkeepers, it all seems that we're all in agreement. I think Ramsdale is set to be the one who won't make the cut, but still good for him to have that last senior call-up. There's maybe a question mark over who starts out of the remaining 3. I think it's probably going to be Pickford, but maybe an argument for the other 2 as well. Who knows? That's not what we're doing today, though. We're going to move on now to the defenders. There's several written down on this list, as is to be expected with a 33-man squad. So before we start to discuss who deserves it, who didn't, I'm just going to read the list. So it's Trent Alexander-Arnold, Reece James, Kieran Trippier, Kyle Walker, John Stones, Harry Maguire, Connor Cody, Tyrone Mings, Ben Chilwell, Luke Shaw, and then 2 first senior call-ups in the defence as well. One goes to Ben Godfrey and another goes to Ben White. He was the first player I read from that list, and he's kind of one of the big headlines that comes out of it, maybe, is Trent Alexander-Arnold being back in after being left out in March. Sam, first of all, does he deserve to have been recalled? And secondly, do you expect him to make the final 26?
I think it's tough because, like we mentioned in our last video, we're in the right back position. We're obviously very overloaded, but I do think, in my humble opinion, that he should have been recalled to the squad. Definitely, I think his performances have picked up in the second half of the season. There's obviously, as is discussed a lot with Trent, there's obviously reservations about the defensive side of his game, which is obviously important in a tournament situation, because it feels like no matter who you play, there's always situations in games where you're under pressure defensively. So there is obviously going to be a big debate on whether he starts. I do think he should be in the squad, though. As
you say, there are 4 right backs included in the squad. Harry, would you agree with Sam that it's one of the biggest calls Southgate still needs to make? And how do you think he can decide on going about it? Because we've spoken in the past about the strengths that each of them carry. How would you go about it? Is there one that stands out that you think, no, pull them out? What do you think?
Well, if I was England manager, I'd take 3 of them. I'd certainly take 3 of them. I wouldn't take 4. I think Matthew Upson, I was watching Sky Sports, he said he'd take all 4. I beg to disagree. I don't think he needs 4 right backs, although they're versatile. they're only versatile if they can do something different to one of their other right backs. If Kieran Trippier and another, say Walker, can both play right back and left back, it's only really good if one of them can do that, because you don't need two right backs that can also play left back. So for me, in the squad would be Walker, it would be Trent Alexander-Arnold, and it would be Trippier. I think all three of them provide something slightly different, whereas I think Reece James, I don't think he has a massive alternative to the other ones. I've looked at Trippier's statistics this season. He's been really good on the defensive side, but he's also produced 6 assists as well. And I think his experience within the squad, and obviously he did that fantastic moment against Croatia. Sadly, the game went against us that day. But I'd choose those three, and I'd leave Reece James out this time, because I don't think he's better than anyone else at a specific thing. I think all three of the other ones, or the other right backs, have something that they're just better at him than, if that makes sense.
Trippier's sort of worked himself back into consideration, really, obviously being a mainstay in the Atletico Madrid side of won La Liga, and he's obviously been working under the master, really, of defensive football in Diego Simeone. So I think he offers, like you say, with your other options at right back, they've got to offer different things for different games. So I think Trippier definitely does offer something different to Arnold, to Walker, who I think will start for England.
Yeah, I have to say I was pretty torn on this before I came back early this afternoon. I came back and scrolled through Twitter, and I think it was a guy called Tom Warville. He works for The Athletic, and he's very stats-based in the stuff he does. And he had a table of the players into their different age brackets. And I think of the 33-man squad, there were only 3 players aged 30 and over. And I think that was Trippier, Walker and Henderson. And that kind of makes me think, is Southgate likely to take one of those players out, most likely to be Trippier? Is he likely to do that when the squad is already so young as it is? I don't know. Devon, I know you're a big fan of Reece James. So would you argue for one of the other right backs to be omitted?
I'd only take 2, because I think Kyle Walker will be taken as a centre half. And like I said, with the goalkeepers, you only really have 2 of them. And I agree with Harry, that is, you've got to look at the traits and see, right, you have to have the main one involved, but then the second person behind him has to offer something else. And I feel like Reece James and Trent are quite similar going forward, but I think Reece James has the edge on Trent defensively. And in my opinion, I'd take Walker, but I'd start Reece James and take Trippier, in my opinion, just because I think Trippier's, you need that old head there as well. Arguably, Walker's there as well, but Walker will be offering, assistance with the centre-half region. And that'd be mine. Not to say, and it's a hard decision. So as we said when we did the who starts Euro 2020 for us then, is that it's not us choosing between, this player and riffraff. We're actually got 4 quality right backs for once. And that, in my opinion, if we were taking Trent, I'd have taken Aaron Wan-Bissaka as well for the defensive side to offer that, again, variety in defence. But from the 4 we've got, I'd take Reece James and Trippier and have Walker as the stand-in and / centre-half.
Yeah, so Trent being the one you would leave at home. If you're a Liverpool fan of a nervous disposition, then look away now, or it's probably too late to look away now. You mentioned there, Devon, you think Walker might be taken as a centre-back. There are 6 other registered, well, not registered centre-backs, but recognised centre-backs in this squad. If you think Walker would then be taken in that position, how many of the 6, so that includes Maguire, Stones, Cody, Godfrey, etc., how many of those 6 would you take along? And, well, how many would you leave out is what I'm asking, essentially.
By leaving that, just having the 2 right backs, I think I'd take 5. I think I'd have Stones and Maguire in there. I would not have. If you're having Kyle Walker there, I'd get rid of Cody and Mings, and Ben White. Sorry, and I'd take Mings for the left-hand side in backup for Maguire. Stones would obviously start either as a central centre half or as a 2 with Maguire, and then Walker and Godfrey would be the guys that would have that would be versatile in that right hand position. if we were to play through.
Yeah, and we mentioned the first senior call-ups for Godfrey and White, as you touched on there. Sam, do you think they're deserved for those two players, or were the likes of Fikayo Tomori and Esri Konsa, do you think they were more deserving of a spot? I know some Villa fans are maybe a bit aggrieved that Konsa isn't in the squad.
I think Ben White was definitely an interesting one. Like you say, you mentioned Tomori there. He's been excellent for AC Milan in the second half of the season, helping them get Champions League football. And there's a lot of AC Milan legends that have spoken highly of him, Paolo Maldini included, which is the highest praise you can get really as a centre-back. And it obviously says a lot about his character to go out on loan there and in search of senior team football. And he's done really well there. So I'd probably, in this sort of provisional squad situation, would have liked to have seen him over someone like White. He's had an okay season at Brighton, but I don't think he's been tearing up any trees necessarily. And Cody, I think if we're going to go with a back three at any point, he is good for that. He's good with his range of passing, especially. But I'm hoping that we go with a four at the back, and in that case, I don't really want someone like him who's not quite got speed on his side. I like Maguire and Stones as the two in there. So yeah, I would have liked to have seen Tomori.
Yeah, and Harry, there was also no place in this 33-man squad for a man who played a key role at the 2018 World Cup. That's Eric Dyer. Do you think had Dyer made the squad, there might have been a little bit of a media uproar? What are your thoughts on that? I'm not a huge fan of his, although I can respect what he did at the World Cup. I think Spurs have had such a poor year that he couldn't make this squad. What's your take on it?
Well, Gareth said it himself. Eric Dyer and Tottenham just haven't had an impressive enough season. That's why he's not getting into the squad. You know, he said he was professional about how he took it, how he was told that he's not getting in the squad. And don't get me wrong, I love the penalty moment, but you can't cling on that to get into another squad. And I just think we've got better players that are more suited to the England system. I just think Eric Dyer, since that World Cup, hasn't progressed as a footballer technically, with his ability-wise, whereas the other options that we have, like Tomori, I know he's not in there, like the Ben White, who I have taken out, but I think they're just better, well-rounded footballers, and that's why Gareth's taken them at the end of the day. Because looking at Ben White, I think he's a more progressive version of Dyer. He can play centre-back, but he can also play in the defensive midfield position. But I feel like I'd be a lot more confident with Ben White there, because I feel like he's a lot more mobile than an Eric Dyer sort of player he's not pulled up any trees in the last 3 years since that penalty moment. So I think it's correct that Dyer didn't make it in.
The thing is we've already touched on how ruthless we've been in the past. With Southgate has been obviously omitting Trent last time. There's no room for sentiment anymore. If we're going to be serious about trying to win a Euros, we have to do what's right and pick the best players. And with Eric Dyer, obviously, as you said, he's always going to be fond and remembered for that penalty, but that ends of that. And there were similar vibes with Trippier, but obviously he has had a strong season.
A name I didn't mention in the defenders list, mainly because on England's list, he was listed in the attackers, Bukayo Saka, who could fill in as a left-back alongside Chilwell and Shaw. Sam, do we need to take three left-backs with us? But where do you see that working? Do you think there will be a place for Saka, or do you think he's maybe experimenting with him in the initial squad before next week's final deadline?
I don't think Saka would go as a defender if he was to be picked. I think he's played a lot more in the left wing spot for Arsenal. So I think obviously we're pretty set in left back. I think with Shaw and Chilwell, they've both had really good seasons. Chilwell especially towards the back end. So I'm pretty set with those. I don't think there's much discussion to be had in that area. Yeah,
Saka's versatility definitely gives him a bit of a boost, but we'll come on to decide where we think he fits in. How do we want to do this then, guys? In terms of the centre backs, are we going to decide now who we think maybe won't make the cut? It seems we're a little bit split on it. What do you reckon we do?
Should we just go through if you've got a list, who have you taken out from the defensive side? That's what I want to know. Who's not made it for you?
I've taken out White and Godfrey. and Reece James.
I've taken two of those. Go on, Dev.
I've simply crossed out Ben White and Connor Cody and gone for Godfrey and Mings as backups to Stone and Maguire, and having Walker there as that third centre half if needed in a back three.
Harry, what about you?
Yeah, similar to Sam, really. I've taken out Ben White, I've taken out Reece James, but I've also taken out Tyrone Mings as well. Those are my three defenders, from what England call defenders at least, anyway.
Interesting. I've got James and White too. I'm also not that sold on Cody. You could call me biased, saying sticking with Big Ben Godfrey. But I do think he's come on leaps and bounds this year under Carlo Ancelotti. So I'd love to see him in that 26.
I'd suggest that Godfrey's probably one of those that falls into the 26 instead of the 23.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. I think that it allows Southgate to have a bit more of a gamble anyway, doesn't it? I think it's difficult to kind of merge from us kind of giving our opinions there. I think it's going to be a hard one for any betting people out there to predict the 7 bang on the money. But I think we've given our opinions. Maybe at the end of the podcast we'll try and make a definitive list of 7. But that's it for the defenders, and we'll move on to the midfielders now. Moving on then to the midfielders in the England squad. And we were just discussing in our little break between Zoom calls, because it cuts off after 40 minutes, we were discussing the weird way in which the England official account on Twitter chose to set the team up. And it looks like England are quite short in the midfield area, but in reality, it doesn't look very short at all. I'm not sure there'll be as much debate on this as there was in the defenders. The list is as follows. It's Declan Rice, Jordan Henderson, Leeds is Calvin Phillips, Chelsea's Mason Mount, and Jude Bellingham, who's been with Borussia Dortmund this year, of course, James Ward-Prowse of Harry Southampton, and Jesse Lingard. I think the majority of these probably picked themselves, but I thought it's worth mentioning Jordan Henderson. Devon, he's been included in the squad despite missing the last 3 months of the season with a groin injury. Do you think it's the right decision to have him in due to his experience? And maybe if he's fit, he can be included? You're shaking your head at me. Go on, tell me.
I just feel like it'd be a little bit unjust to some of the other players in there if Henderson was to come back after not playing since that Merseyside derby in February and walk straight back in, because other players will have earned their spot, and I think with like we said, sentiment, but on merit. And 2, is he going to be as fresh after just 2 friendlies and a few weeks of training? Is he going to be that fresh? He probably needed to have started the last 3 games for me to get in there, because if we're planning to go all the way, it's going to be an intense. But I suppose the tournament-like thing is something, a bit of a sink or swim for him, whether he gets back. He's got a lot of games in a short period where he can actually get back up to match fitness, but is that going to add more fatigue? Is it going to put stress on the injury? And that's why I probably wouldn't have picked him.
Fair enough. Sam, you're shaking your head at that. Do you not agree?
Yeah, I disagree. I think, I mean, he makes a good point, Devon. There is other players that could probably sneak in there and probably deserve to be considered. But I think Henderson's just too important to this team. I think it was Harry Kane in that interview with Gary Neville on that overlap channel. He talked really highly about Henderson and his leadership qualities in the dressing room. And I think that's just important in a tournament situation. I think he's been obviously key to Liverpool's progression under Jurgen Klopp over these last couple of years. And I think he probably won't start the first game against Croatia, but I think we can work him in. And he is, like I say, he's just too key for his qualities off the field as well as on the field to the way we play.
Yeah, I'm not withstanding any of that. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with any of that, sorry, because I said when we did this in, what was it, March, when he just got injured, and I said that he's very important, and I preferred him as that kind of box-to-box midfielder with a certain best English CDM ever, based on the conversations we have that we'll probably mention in a minute. But as part of the again, like Godfrey, I think having him in there would be beneficial. But just in my opinion, I probably wouldn't take him just for the risk of if we took him and he got injured. I know there's obviously the reserve bits, but it's just I don't know. I feel like it'd be a hindrance rather than a success. But it's vital to opinion.
I think that's the perfect thing about having a provisional squad is even though Liverpool aren't in any European competition, so it won't change that much. Maybe in a week's time, there'll be a clearer understanding of, where his injury is at the current stage. And I might be wrong, but I swear I heard it on Sky at some point. You have to name your official squad on June the 1st, but up to your team's very first fixture, there can be adjustments. So maybe by June the 12th, maybe he's got better fitness, maybe it's a lot worse, and that's where they can make those adjustments. But I agree. I think because of his leadership qualities, I think he's imperative in the dressing room, and I do think he's a level above any other player in that position in this England squad. I think that's why I just about have him in there, even if he can't play the first week, 2 weeks. Hopefully by then we'll still be in the competition after the group stage, and then he can play maybe the more important games. Some would call.
Arguably, though, if we are going into, if you're saying June the 12th, we've already played 2 games by then, I think. And based on that, if we got out of tick groups by somebody said Jude Bellingham's...
Our first game is on the 13th.
Is it? Oh,
yeah.
I've got my date completely wrong. I thought it started on 6.
Croatia on the 13th.
Never mind.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the women's Euros. Okay. Well, can we re-record that bit?
No. We'll move on.
You know what I mean? If he's struggling to make that first couple of games and we are playing and we have got out of the group and we've done well in there and Jude Bellingham stepped up, for example, are we really does Henderson just then go, right, see you later, Jude, and we get into the next bit? It's going to be a tough one for him to work back for as well.
It'll be tough, but then if he is a better player, it's difficult to say because he might still be injured, he might still have that thing, but for me, I know a lot of people like form. How much are they playing? How well are they playing? But at the end of the day, if we're going to want to win this Euros, we're going to have the best players, no matter what form. And for me, there's always the toss-up of if you're not playing fantastically well or you've been injured, you have to be the best person in that position to get selected. And that's how you get selected. If you're on the best form, that's how you get selected. If you're not the best player and you're not on the greatest form, I know it sounds obvious, but like James Maddison, for example, I know we'll get onto him later, as he's not the best player out of all those players in his designated position and he's not been on form, that's why he's not in the squads. And I think, yes, Jordan Henderson's been injured, but because I feel like he's the best player and he's got the leadership qualities to boot, I think that's why he's been put in this provisional squad.
The problem is now I'm going to sound very hypocritical when we start to talk about Jack Grealish in a bit, so we'll move on quickly.
Harry, I wanted to ask you about Mr. Ward-Prowse, and we've seen him over the last few international breaks. He's been included. He scored his first England goal, of course, against San Marino. I know that's not a massive feat, but even so, Southampton maybe didn't finish the season in the way they would have liked, but you must still be really pleased to see him in this initial squad.
Oh, it's absolutely great to see. It keeps the dream alive for me that he might make it. And do you know what? I do think he's got a reasonable chance. I think a lot of people are writing him out of the squad, and I can understand why. 15th place. Yes, I know he's played 2 seasons back-to-back, but I'd also hope as a professional footballer that doesn't have European football that he would be relatively fit if he doesn't get suspension. So I do think, although it's a very impressive feat because no one's ever done that as a midfielder, I do think, I don't think that gets him into the squad per se. I think what does is that I think he's a differential. I think because of his set piece qualities, I think that will certainly give him a boost. I think Jesse Lingard, for me, I don't think should, or in my opinion, should get into the final squad because I don't think he offers an alternative to maybe what a Phil Foden, a Jack Grealish, or Mason Mount does, or at least is that much better than them. And I also think he offers something different to Jude Bellingham in the fact that because of those set-piece qualities, you can sub him on with 20 minutes to go and go, right, let's play for corners, let's whip balls into players like Harry Maguire who are especially gifted in that sort of sense, and that'll help you get goals. And so for me, I'd obviously say that I think James Ward-Prowse will and should get in, but I can also understand the point of, maybe not.
Yeah, Sam, I would say, looking at the list, that it probably will be a toss-up between Ward-Prowse and Lingard in terms of who goes and who stays in the squad. What's your take on it? Would you edge towards Lingard or Ward-Prowse?
It's tough. Harry raises some good points there about obviously Ward-Prowse's capabilities from dead ball situations, but I think to use his own sort of point against him, I think Jesse Lingard's proved what kind of a player he is during his loan at West Ham. He's been just absolutely brilliant. Obviously winning the Player of the Month for April. I'd probably take him on the momentum he's got at the moment and how he's really added the X factor to this West Ham team and has been key to them getting European football this season, I think. And he does offer something a little bit different, a little bit of something different to bring off the bench potentially in those tight games.
I have to say, I think this would be one of those calls that whichever way Southgate goes with it, I wouldn't have too much of a problem, because I think we've just outlined there in that last 2 minutes the strengths that both of them carry. I don't think either player is going to be a starter for England, but I think they've both got a lot to offer. Dev, would you agree that, whichever way this goes, it's a positive thing?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like Harry said, the set piece aspect to James Ward-Prowse is unbelievable, but it's not just that. I think James Ward-Prowse is kind of the perfect England player that you look up to. He plays with his heart on his sleeve. He gets about on the pitch. He gets stuck in. He's got a little bit of rat in him, where what you really like about him. However, if you're taking him solely for the free kick aspect, you may as well. I'd get him out of the squad, let someone else in, because the likes of, if we have Trippier there, he's very good on set pieces. Jack Grealish has got a great delivery if we include him. Even Harry Kane can take corners, obviously. Hopefully not. But
no, not well.
There's enough. I mean, Mason Mount is a fantastic free kick taker as well. So it's not like we're lacking in that area. Whereas Lingard's come through the second half of the season like a steam train. He's just made himself known again, and he's got previous tournament experience. He was very good last in 2018. I know I said about sentiment, but I feel like Lingard's definitely earned this if he gets in there. Yeah, and plus, we need some good celebrations as well in front of the fans. So we're sorted on that front.
I'm not sure where Ward-Prowse would sort of fit positionally in this team, because we're sort of, with Declan Rice, we've got that sitter. He is going to be the sitter in this England team, and he's very good at that. So I'm just, if we were to take Ward-Prowse, I wouldn't be sure like who I'd take him. Him off. Who would you take off for Ward-Prowse?
That is my worry, because when he has played for England in the last 3 games, they played him more as an attacking role, and that's not his position. That used to be his position maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago when they were undecided on where his best place is. But I feel like England have played him out of position to both his own detriment, but also the team's detriment. If you're going to play in that, you might as well play someone that's more natural there. My only sort of half feeling towards him getting into the squad is that Gareth Southgate has seemed to like playing him. I know it has only been in the qualifiers and some of the friendlies, but he has either started him or he's brought him on with 20 minutes ago. Whether that's anything to take out of, will he be in the squad or not, I don't know. But he has got minutes when he's been in the squad compared to some other players. So that's the only saving grace or some possibility that I think could have an impact in it all.
A big thinking is that if we are 1-0 down with 20 minutes to go, you're not going, oh, James Ward-Prowse. You're either throwing on a striker, you're throwing on a creative midfielder. Jack Grealish is on the bench. If we take Rashford, you're putting him on. You're taking Declan Rice out of that. You're putting someone like George Henderson in Declan Rice's role and pushing 2 10s up or something like that. So out of everyone, I think Ward-Prowse either starts or he doesn't get off the bench for me, unless we are trying to play a bit more reserved.
Question is it 3 subs or 5? Because I think that could have a big impact as well. Because if it's 3 subs, then I completely agree with you. But then if it's 5, I think that could also change the aspects of the game completely. So I'm not sure on which one it is. But if it's 5, I think Ward-Prowse could be a good alternative off the bench. But if it's 3, I most certainly agree with you.
The problem with putting 5 on is managers don't always tend to want to do it, because it really disjoints the team a lot. And it can actually be harmful. But I see what you mean. I mean, it is in knockout, especially last 2 minutes, it's all or nothing, isn't it? So I suppose.
I'm not sure whether it has been confirmed whether it's 3 or 5 yet. I know that there's only going to be 12 subs allowed. They won't be allowed all 26 in the matchday squad. That's for certain. One thing I would say, I don't think it's a dead cert that Ward-Prowse wouldn't be brought on. Say if you're playing against a country who are particularly poor from set pieces. I think he is that man. I know we've mentioned players there who can take them, but I don't think any of them are as much of a specialist at them as Ward-Prowse is. And I quite like him as an operator. So I think he could be worthy of that. Who knows? We've probably spoken about midfielders for too long. I was teeing it up as if we would just move through it smoothly. It hasn't been, but that's better. It's better than it hasn't been. Moving on then.
Not for Sam's editing time.
Fine.
Moving on then to the attackers in the squad. And this is where England fans, I think, are probably most excited because of the options that we've got are just mouth-watering, really. I'm going to read out the list and then we'll maybe argue about who should be there, who hasn't been included even in this squad. The list is as follows: Raheem Sterling, Jack Grealish, Marcus Rashford, Phil Foden, Jadon Sancho, and then Bukayo Saka, who I've already mentioned, who was listed in this attackers list. Harry Kane, of course. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to argue against Harry Kane. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Mason Greenwood, and Ollie Watkins. I'd say the main debate surrounding these players is the backup options to Harry Kane. As I said there, Calvert-Lewin, Greenwood, and Watkins are those three strikers below him. We have Patrick Bamford in the Premier League this year. He was the second highest English goal scorer with 17 goals. He also managed 7 assists. Sam, I'm going to come to you first. Should Bamford feel hard done by on this one? Why do you think Southgate has opted for Watkins instead?
Well, I'm not going to try and justify Southgate's decisions, but I think Bamford will feel a little bit hard done by. Like you mentioned, he's the second highest English goal scorer in the league this season with 17. But at the same time, I do think he is very much a system player. So he sort of thrived and gotten used to Bielsa's high intensity system where there's been a lot of chances created for him, especially this season with the introduction of Rafinha. And you've got Stuart Dallas and Jack Harrison and players like that do create a lot of opportunities for him. And I don't know if we'll have that same sort of thing in the England squad. But obviously, like you say, Harry Kane is the captain. He's the leader. He's going to start every game and probably play 90 minutes in every game. So I don't know how important this decision will be. But I think, yeah, Bamford has a right to be a little bit, disheartened by this pick. But obviously, Dominic Calvert-Lewin's had a good season as well.
Yeah, as you say there, we are talking about a player who's solely going to be used off the bench, unless, of course, Harry Kane picks up an injury, in which case I would be very worried about England's chances. But let's hope that doesn't take place. Devon, Mason Greenwood is given a call up as well. A man who, well, I say a man, he's really a kid, really, isn't he? He's 19. He's younger than all of us. Well, I don't know specific. He's about our age. He's made the squad. He had a quiet start to the season and then really flourished at the end. Do you think he's deserving of the call up, and will he stay in the squad?
I'll just ignore that he's 2 years younger. But yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Every time someone seems to write off Mason Greenwood, he bounces back, and he seems to take the onus sometimes in Man United's attack this season when Rashford's performances have dropped or they need a goal. I think we're against Leicester where he came into it the other week. But I think it might be just a bit too early / wrong time. I think there's a lot of players ahead of him, which is not to his detriment, because I think Greenwood's been really good when he has featured. But I think you're looking at that sort of right wing spot where he would play, and you think, well, this player who we'll probably mention and this player are going to be higher up in that list. So for me, if we could take him, great. If not, he'd be one of the names that I'd probably have on that 7 that don't make it just there.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's good as a backup on the right for Sancho. I think he's perfect in that position. So that's why I personally would take him.
Yeah, I think Greenwood is explosive and he offers something really different. I would also have him in the 26. Harry, could you have made an argument for your man Danny Ings making the squad? I know he's had a few call-ups over the last year or two as well, but hasn't quite made it this time.
I think it's just the injury problems. I think Gareth Southgate talks about his March squad, and he said that, I enjoyed it in March. Why do we need to change it? And to be fair, if it was winning back then, why change it? But like I said, I think a massive part of it is injuries. I think if it was Euro 2020, but actually in 2020, he'd absolutely walk into the squad, the 22 goals this season. But this season, he's only got 13. And when you got Bamford scoring more, when you got Watkins scoring more, when you got Calvert-Lewin scoring more, no matter, how many more games they've played, like I said, it's down to form. And if they're scoring more goals as a striker, that's all you need to do. Like Sam says, I think Bamford would certainly feel unlucky not to get in the squad, not just his goals. He's also got 7 assists. I think it would help try and connect the play. I think a lot of people say, his finishing is not brilliant, this, that. He only has 2.8 shots a game. That's only 0.2 more than Watkins. I'm looking down here. So I don't think that's something that you can really hit him with due to the fact that the amount of goals that he has scored. So yeah, I'm not surprised that Bamford didn't get in. I never thought he would, because he hasn't been in any squad before this, and there's only a couple players, in the defensive section that's been able to do that, who's been able to get in without a call-up before that. But I think Southgate likes players that have been in the squad before quite a lot of times, like I've said, and I think that if Bamford's in this sort of form in a year's time, he'll be one of the first names in the squad. Not the team sheet. Obviously, he's going to be second place to Harry Kane, as any other striker in the squad would be. But he'd definitely be, if he could do this again next season, he'll be definitely in for a shoe-in for the squad.
Yeah, I think you might be right there. I think it's maybe time that we start to piece together these 7 unlucky players who maybe aren't going to get there. I think we decided on Ramsdale. That was pretty clear. So it's down to the final 6. From these attackers then, is there anyone in particular who stands out to you and you think, I'm not sure he's needed? Personally, I'm looking at Bukayo Saka. I look at the other attacking options we've got, and I think if they're sat on the bench, I don't see where Saka fits in. And given we've already got 2 very capable options at left back, I don't think that'll be necessary. Would you agree with that?
Saka will be an excellent option in the future, like you said, like we mentioned already, with his versatility. But like you say, there's too much talent in the attacking areas, which is where he's predominantly played for Arsenal this season, to warrant the call-up.
I think in a 26-man squad, his versatility is sort of not gone against him, because I don't think he's quite at the level. But when you've got 3 extra players, you don't need players that can play 7 different positions, because you've got that space to actually select players that are natural in that position. And like you both said, if he's on the bench, there's at least 3 or 4 men in each position, not by left backs. You're only going to take 2. But in the attacking sense, at least, I think there's a few more ahead of him. So yeah, definitely one for the future, but not for this tournament for me. Not for this tournament.
So we've kind of mentioned there 4 strikers, 1 including Kane, and then 3 who are going to be competing behind him, unless we're kind of using Greenwood as a wide man, as Sam suggested, which again is another option. Do we think one of those 3 behind Kane will miss out?
It's probably Watkins, I think.
Yeah, I'm in agreement, Sam.
Southgate likes Calvert-Lewin.
Devon, not too sure yourself?
If we were going down the route of having 3 strikers, I would have gone Bamford instead of Calvert-Lewin, just because I think in terms of how Harry Kane plays, I think Bamford, there's a big part of Bamford's game that is quite similar to Kane, whereas Calvert-Lewin, I don't think he brings players in as well as Bamford would. But that being said, I think based on Southgate's opinion, it probably would be Watkins that took the hit. I just think Watkins is a little bit different than Calvert-Lewin to Kane, and with Kane being that sole striker, I think DCL will not be as key. It will not be too key going forward, whereas Watkins would offer that. If we wanted to throw another striker on, he wouldn't be getting in Kane's way like Calvert-Lewin would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's certainly a debate either way on that one. I think Calvert-Lewin is maybe a little bit more popular with Southgate, and maybe in general with the England fans. It doesn't seem like there have been many calls from people for Calvert-Lewin to not be there, but who knows how that will go. I don't know. I think, do we need to decide now on who our 7 will be. I think we've made so many suggestions for those who have got a right to stay and others who maybe don't. There's more obvious ones like Ramsdale and Saka, but then the centre-backs aren't. Are you happy, you guys, to kind of just, I don't know, we've all given our suggestions, but we maybe don't need to find a definitive 7. Would you agree with that?
I'd say I'd get you in a corner, George, gun to your head and say, let's get this 7 now. Let's not, tiptoe around it. We need to get it done.
Come on. Ramsdale, Ben White, Saka, Watkins. We decided those two. Three more.
They're all in my 7, Sam.
One midfielder's being cut. Is it Ward-Prowse or is it?
Ward-Prowse.
I think I would cut Lingard.
And you probably already know.
Personally, with how much I dislike how we're probably going to set up with him as an 8, I wouldn't take Calvin Phillips, but I think he will be in there as a dead cert. I'd make a case that Greenwood would get chopped, personally.
Would you?
I think you're not going to put Greenwood ahead of Foden, you're not going to put him ahead of Sterling. I'd probably not put Greenwood, obviously different side, but Rashford. I think Rashford would be in this squad. I think Rashford might be even a case to get dropped based on the others. Grealish. What do we think about Grealish? Because obviously he's had the injury and he's only just come back.
Cannot leave Grealish at home either.
Yeah. Can we not?
We've got 3 more to get rid of.
I'd Godfrey, Reece James, and Ward-Prowse as my other 3.
I'm in agreement on Reece James, Sam.
Yeah, I put Reece James down as well.
I've been outdone again. At least I had to.
Devin
I had
really
to pick up Declan Rice this time.
So that's 3 people. Are we saying Reece James is going to be back at home?
Is gone.
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah,
so,
I've just highlighted James'
name. Cup final performance.
So we probably need to get rid of another centre back and
Cody.
A central midfielder. I've got Cody written down. I have to.
I'm happy to go with Cody.
Yeah.
I think Southgate will go Godfrey, but
I think you might be right
as well.
I'm really hoping that isn't.
This is our squad.
I'm happy to take Cody out.
Yeah.
I still think Mason Greenwood won't make the cut. I think he'll just miss it.
So you think he'll go with Ward-Prowse and Lingard?
I'm putting Greenwood above Ward-Prowse if we're doing it like that.
I think I would as well. But, so are we assuming that Lingard is definitely in?
Lingard?
Yeah.
I think Lingard deserves it, but
I don't know.
I think he's been
there's a lot of people that. I think there's a lot of people that can do the same thing as Lingard. I think that's my only problem. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. He's had a great second half of the season. But I think there's other players that can also do his role. That's my concern for Lingard.
I think we stick with Greenwood. Harry, what's your take on Greenwood?
Up until about an hour ago, I always didn't have Greenwood in, but I like that he can play on the right. I like that he can play through the middle. And even though I don't agree with the testimony that he's the second best striker in English football, in English football, I do think he can smash a ball into a corner without thinking about it. So I think he does give something different. He does give that sort of, he's got a weird sense of naivety against high-level defences. It doesn't seem to scare him at all. And I know it shouldn't as a professional footballer, but it seems like whatever sort of attack or defence that he comes across, he can just wiggle right through and slam one across the corner. So I would have Greenwood in because I don't think behind Sancho there's another right winger of the same level of quality. We've got a lot of people on the left and a lot of people that can play in the middle. But on the right, there's not too many.
Phil Foden starts for me on that right.
I'm not sure. Not
right.
Maybe not on the right.
I think on the left, not the right.
He's been playing. He's playing consistently off it right. I mean, think about that Liverpool performance when Foden were coming off the right, and he was absolutely unplayable, wasn't he? And I think we've had numerous. I mean, if we do another episode, say with the 26 saying right,
anyway, we're not debating who's starting anyway.
Yeah.
Time is running on. People watching this or watching us arguing it now anyway.
Right.
I think in terms of
we'll leave that one open.
Should we leave the last spot there? Should we say anyone who's got this far, tell us who you would bin of that final spot, or tell us of the 6 that we've already got rid of how we've got it wrong. Because I think we could argue about Lingard and Ward-Prowse for a long time, particularly Harry, and that's fine, Harry. I'm with you. I'm with you on Ward-Prowse. So we won't argue any more today, because the Zoom call I'm looking at is saying 4 minutes remaining. So all these Zoom calls, hopefully at some point we won't have to do them ever again.
Don't fight the Wi-Fi, George. Get on with it.
I'm waffling now. Yeah, I will get on with it. But as we said, let us know who your 7th man is. Let us know what you think of the squad overall. Who will Southgate leave at home? Has he made any glaring errors which you're looking at and you think? We're done with university for this year now, so hopefully you can expect more of these to come across the summer. And we'd also like you to let us know what sort of coverage do you want us to produce during the Euros. That would be really good to see any of your ideas, if you have any. As always, we're over on Twitter @_Fourmation and on Facebook as well. No quiz this week, but that will be something which we maybe try and resume as these carry on. But that's all from us this time. We hope you've enjoyed it. It's been an interesting one. As we said earlier on, everything with England, everyone's got an opinion, so it's always a good one. And we hope you enjoyed. But we will see you next time. Thank you very much. Great to be back.
Bye.